The family dinner. The chandelier in the Whitmore Mansion dining room sparkled like 1,000 stars, but Jackson Whitmore felt nothing but darkness closing in. His mother, Rebecca, sat perfectly poised at the head of the table, her silver hair styled flawlessly, discussing the merits of Amanda Richardson, daughter of the Richardson Hotel dynasty. "Jackson, darling, Amanda graduated from Stanford with honors. She speaks 4 languages and sits on 3 charity boards," Rebecca said, cutting her salmon with practiced precision. Jackson gripped his wine glass tighter. At 34 years old, he had built Whitmore Enterprises into a powerhouse that merged technology with sustainable real estate development. He had proven himself 1,000 times over. Yet here he sat, being lectured about marriage like a teenager. "Mother, I appreciate your concern, but I can choose my own wife," Jackson replied, trying to keep his voice level. His father, Thomas, lowered his newspaper. The older man's gray eyes fixed on his son with that familiar look of disappointment. "Son, this is not just about you. Our family has responsibilities. The merger with Richardson Properties would strengthen our position in the market." The breaking point. Rain began drumming against the floor-to-ceiling windows, matching the storm building inside Jackson. He had spent 15 years working 80-hour weeks, revolutionizing green building practices, creating affordable housing initiatives. None of it seemed to matter to his parents as much as who he married. "You know what?" Jackson stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble floor. "I am done with this conversation. I will marry the first woman who walks through my office door tomorrow morning." Problem solved. The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca's fork clattered onto her plate. Thomas folded his newspaper slowly, his expression unreadable. "Jackson, do not say things you do not mean," Rebecca said quietly, but there was steel in her voice. "I mean every word," Jackson shot back. "You want to be married? Fine. Tomorrow morning, whoever walks through that door first becomes my wife." Thomas rose from his seat, his 6-foot frame commanding attention. "In this family, a promise is sacred. Your grandfather taught me that. I taught you that. Are you certain about this declaration?" Jackson met his father's gaze without flinching. "Absolutely certain. Now, if you will excuse me." He left the dining room, his footsteps echoing through the hallway as he climbed the stairs to his private suite. Once inside, he walked onto the balcony overlooking San Francisco Bay. The city lights twinkled below, and he wondered what kind of chaos he had just unleashed. Natalie's morning. Across the bay in Oakland, Natalie Brooks checked her reflection one last time in the cracked mirror of her tiny studio apartment. The navy blue dress was her best one, though she had worn it to every interview for the past 8 months. Her portfolio sat ready by the door, filled with designs she had created during better times. 2 years ago, she had been a rising star at Davidson Interior Design. Then the company had collapsed in a financial scandal, and Natalie had found herself unemployed along with 30 other talented designers. Since then, rejection had become her constant companion. "Today is different," she whispered to herself, practicing her smile. "Today, everything changes." The interview at Whitmore Enterprises was for a senior design position on their new sustainable housing project. It was exactly the kind of work Natalie dreamed of doing, creating beautiful, functional spaces for families who deserved better than generic apartment blocks. She grabbed her portfolio and headed out, taking 3 buses to reach the gleaming Whitmore Tower in the financial district. The building itself was a masterpiece of green architecture, with vertical gardens climbing its sides and solar panels integrated seamlessly into its design. The fateful meeting. The lobby took Natalie's breath away. Natural light flooded through skylights, and a living wall of plants created a small indoor forest. She approached the reception desk, her heart pounding. "Good morning. I'm Natalie Brooks. I have an interview with Human Resources at 9 o'clock. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman named Helen, checked her computer and frowned. "I am sorry, Miss Brooks, but I do not see you on the schedule for today. Could you check your email again?" Natalie's stomach dropped. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and opened the confirmation email. It says right here, Thursday, November 15th, 9 a.m. Helen made several phone calls, her expression growing more apologetic. "It appears there was a scheduling error. The HR director is out of the office today. I'm terribly sorry. Please." Natalie heard the desperation in her own voice and hated it. "Is there anyone else who could see me? I came all the way from Oakland. I really need this opportunity." Helen hesitated, then picked up her phone again. "Let me try something." Mr. Whitmore sometimes conducts interviews personally for special projects. She paused, listening. "Yes, sir. I understand. Thank you." She turned to Natalie with a surprised smile. "Mr. Whitmore will see you. 35th floor, corner office. Good luck." The door opens. Jackson had arrived at his office at 6 in the morning, unable to sleep after the disastrous dinner. His assistant, Patricia, had already briefed him on the scheduling mix-up with the designer interview. When Helen called about Natalie Brooks, something clicked in his mind. This was it. The moment his impulsive promise would come true. He straightened his tie, his heart racing in a way it never did during million-dollar negotiations. The knock on his door sounded impossibly loud. "Come in," he called, his voice steadier than he felt. The door opened, and Natalie Brooks stepped into his office. Jackson forgot how to breathe. She was beautiful, but that was not what stopped him. It was the determination in her warm brown eyes, the proud set of her shoulders despite the nervousness he could see in the way she clutched her portfolio. Her dark curly hair was pulled back professionally, and her dress was elegant, but clearly not expensive. Everything about her spoke of someone who had worked for every opportunity, who valued merit over privilege. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore. I am Natalie Brooks," she said, extending her hand with confidence. "I apologize for the confusion about the interview. I hope I am not disturbing you." Jackson stood automatically, his mind racing. This woman, this complete stranger, was about to become his wife if he kept his word. And looking at her, at the fire in her eyes and the portfolio she held like a shield, he realized something profound. He wanted to keep his word. "Please sit down, Miss Brooks," he managed to say as he shook her hand. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him. "I'm glad you are here. We have a lot to discuss." About the design position, Natalie settled into the chair across from his desk, opening her portfolio. "About that," Jackson said slowly, "and something else entirely." As Natalie looked at him, with confusion beginning to cloud her features, Jackson realized his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. The question was whether she would be brave enough to take the leap with him. Natalie watched as Jackson Whitmore walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco. Something in his posture made her nervous. This was not how interviews usually started. "Miss Brooks, before we discuss the design position, I need to tell you something that will sound completely insane," Jackson said, turning to face her. Natalie gripped her portfolio tighter. "I am listening. Last night, I had an argument with my parents about marriage. They have been pushing me to marry someone from their social circle for business reasons. In a moment of frustration, I made a declaration." He paused, running a hand through his dark hair. "I said I would marry the first woman who walked through my office door this morning." The words hung in the air like smoke. Natalie blinked several times, certain she had misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "You are that woman, Miss Brooks. And in my family, when you give your word, you keep it, no matter what." Natalie stood up abruptly, her portfolio sliding to the floor and scattering her carefully organized designs. "This is a joke, right? Some kind of test." "I wish it were," Jackson said quietly. "But I am completely serious. I am asking you to marry me." The rejection. Natalie began gathering her papers from the expensive carpet, her hands shaking with anger and disbelief. "Mr. Whitmore, I came here looking for a job, not a husband. Especially not one who thinks he could buy a wife like he buys property." "That is not what this is," Jackson said, kneeling to help her collect the scattered designs. As he picked up a rendering of a community center, he paused. "This is remarkable, the way you have integrated outdoor spaces with the building flow. This is exactly what our housing project needs." "Do not try to distract me with compliments," Natalie snapped, snatching the paper from his hands. "I am not some desperate woman who will sell herself for money. I know you are not. That is why I am asking." Jackson stood, offering her the rest of her papers. "Miss Brooks," Natalie Please sit down for 5 more minutes. Let me explain what I am really proposing." Against her better judgment, Natalie sat back down. Maybe it was the sincerity in his blue eyes, or maybe it was curiosity about just how crazy this billionaire actually was. The terms. Jackson returned to his desk and pulled out a leather folder. "I'm not asking for a real marriage. I am proposing a business arrangement. 1 year. We live separately, maintain our own lives, and appear together only when necessary for family events. After 12 months, we divorce quietly, and you keep the design position permanently." "You are insane," Natalie said flatly. "Possibly, but think about what I'm offering. You would head our entire sustainable housing division. $50 million budget. Complete creative control. You could design communities that actually help people, not just make developers rich." Natalie felt her resolve wavering. $50 million. Complete control. She could create the kind of housing she had dreamed about since architecture school. Places where families could thrive, not just survive. "Why me?" she asked. "You could have any woman in San Francisco agree to this arrangement." Jackson leaned forward, his expression serious. "Because in the 10 minutes since you walked in here, you have shown more integrity than most people I know. You got angry when you thought I was trying to buy you. That tells me you have principles. I need someone with principles for this to work." Meeting the family. 3 days later, Natalie found herself being driven through the hills of Pacific Heights in a car that cost more than her entire year's rent. She had agreed to meet Jackson's family before making her final decision. If she was going to lie to these people for a year, she needed to know who they were. The Whitmore mansion was even more intimidating than she had imagined. Built in the 1920s, it sprawled across 2 acres with manicure gardens and a view of the Golden Gate Bridge that probably cost more than most people made in a lifetime. Rebecca Whitmore greeted them at the door, elegant in a cream-colored suit. Her eyes swept over Natalie with the practiced assessment of someone used to evaluating people instantly. "You must be Natalie," Rebecca said warmly, though Natalie detected calculation behind the smile. "Jackson has told us so much about you." "Has he?" Natalie glanced at Jackson, who gave her a slight, reassuring nod. Inside, the house was a museum of family history. Portraits lined the walls, each generation of Whitmores staring down with serious expressions. Natalie felt like an imposter, which technically she was about to become. Thomas Whitmore was waiting in the living room, a book about sustainable architecture in his hands. He stood when they entered, and Natalie was struck by how much Jackson resembled his father. "Miss Brooks," Thomas said, shaking her hand firmly. "My son tells me you have innovative ideas about affordable housing design." This was not what Natalie had expected. "Yes, sir. I believe good design should be accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy." Thomas's eyes lit up. "Exactly right. My father used to say that buildings shape lives. If we only build beautiful things for the rich, we're saying poor people do not deserve beauty." For the next hour, Natalie found herself in deep conversation with Thomas about architecture, community planning, and social responsibility. Rebecca chimed in with stories about her charity work in underserved neighborhoods. These were not the shallow, greedy people Natalie had expected, the growing complication. Over lunch on the terrace, Rebecca turned to more personal matters. "Tell me, Natalie, how did you and Jackson meet?" Natalie and Jackson had rehearsed this. "I came to his office for an interview. We started talking about sustainable design, and we just connected. It was unexpected. The best things usually are," Rebecca said with a knowing smile. "You know, Thomas and I did not marry for love either. Our parents arranged it for business reasons. But we learned to love each other. Sometimes practical beginnings lead to profound endings." Natalie felt guilt twist in her stomach. These people were being so kind, so welcoming, and she was lying to them. After lunch, Jackson showed her the gardens. Once they were alone, Natalie stopped walking. "Jackson, I cannot do this. Your parents are wonderful people. They deserve better than being lied to." "I know," Jackson said quietly. "But Natalie, they have been lying to themselves for years, thinking I need to be managed and controlled. Maybe this will teach them to trust me to make my own choices. Or maybe it will break their hearts when they find out the truth." Jackson looked at her for a long moment. What if we made sure there was less truth to hide? What does that mean? What if we actually gave this a real chance? Not just a business arrangement, but an actual partnership. Get to know each other. See if maybe there is something real here. Natalie's heart beat faster. That was not the deal. Deals can change. People can surprise you. Jackson took a step closer. You surprised me, Natalie. In 3 days, you have challenged me more than anyone has in years. You're not impressed by money or status. You care about things that matter. That is rare in my world. The wedding preparations. 2 weeks later, Natalie found herself in the most expensive bridal boutique in San Francisco with Rebecca and Jackson's younger sister, Claire, who had flown in from Boston specifically for the wedding. Claire was 28, warm and funny, working as a marine biologist and completely unimpressed by her family's wealth. She had greeted Natalie with a huge hug and whispered, "Thank God. I was terrified Jackson would marry some boring society clone." "Girls, look at this one," Rebecca called from across the boutique, holding up a dress that probably cost more than Natalie's car. The dress was stunning. Simple ivory silk with delicate beading on the shoulders, elegant without being showy. When Natalie tried it on, even she had to admit she looked like someone who belonged in the Whitmore world. "You look beautiful," Claire said softly. "Jackson is going to lose his mind when he sees you." "It is not a real marriage," Natalie reminded her, though the words felt less true every time she said them. "Sure it is not," Claire said with a grin that suggested she saw right through the charade. Doubts and discoveries. That evening, Natalie met her best friend Lauren at their favorite coffee shop in Oakland. Lauren had been her roommate in design school and knew everything about Natalie's struggles over the past 2 years. "Let me get this straight," Lauren said after Natalie explained everything. "A gorgeous billionaire proposed marriage, offering you your dream job and financial security, and you are having doubts? It is not real, Lauren. It is a business deal." "Is it though? Because the way you talk about him, the way your eyes light up when you mention his name, that seems pretty real to me." Natalie stirred her coffee, avoiding Lauren's knowing gaze. "He is smart, passionate about his work, and he actually listens when I talk about design. But that does not mean anything. It means everything. Natalie, you have been struggling for 2 years. You have sent out hundreds of resumes. You are 3 months behind on rent. This is your chance, not just professionally, but maybe personally too. What if I fall for him, and it is all just part of the arrangement for him? What if I am just a convenient solution to his family problems?" Lauren reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "What if you are more than that? What if he is falling for you too and is just as scared as you are?" The contract signing. The next morning, Natalie met Jackson at a law office downtown to sign the official agreement. His attorney, an efficient woman named Patricia Chun, had drawn up a contract that protected both of them. "Everything is here as discussed," Patricia said, sliding the documents across the conference table. 1-year marriage, separate residences, division of assets, an employment contract for Miss Brooks that continues regardless of the marriage outcome. Natalie read through every page carefully. It was all there, exactly as Jackson had promised. Fair, clear, and completely businesslike. "There is one change I would like to make," Jackson said suddenly. Natalie looked up. "What kind of change?" "I want to remove the separate residences clause. I think we should live together." "Jackson," Patricia said carefully, "that was not what we discussed." "I know, but if we're going to make this believable, we need to actually act like a married couple. Besides," he looked directly at Natalie, "I would like to get to know you better." "Is that so terrible?" Natalie's mouth went dry. Living with Jackson would change everything. It would make this arrangement feel real in ways she was not sure she was ready for. "Where would we live?" she asked. "I have a house in Sausalito. 4 bedrooms, private, away from the city chaos. You would have your own space, your own studio for design work. But we would share common areas, have dinner together, actually talk. Like partners." Patricia looked between them with growing concern. "I feel obligated to remind you both that the more real this appears, the more complicated it becomes emotionally." "Life is complicated," Jackson said. "We might as well embrace it." Natalie thought about her tiny studio apartment, about the loneliness of the past 2 years, about the possibility of something unexpected and real. "Okay," she said, "let's do it. But Jackson, if this gets too complicated, if either of us feels like this is becoming something we cannot handle, we talk about it honestly." "Deal." Jackson extended his hand across the table. "Deal." When their hands touched, Natalie felt that same electric current she had felt in his office. This was either the best decision of her life or the biggest mistake. Only time would tell which. The wedding day. The wedding took place 3 weeks later at a historic mansion in Napa Valley that the Whitmore family had owned for generations. It was small by society standards, only 75 guests, but elegant beyond anything Natalie had ever experienced. Her parents had driven up from their home in Fresno, her father looking uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo, her mother crying happy tears while trying not to gawk at the opulence surrounding them. "Baby girl, are you sure about this?" her father, Robert, asked as they prepared to walk down the aisle. "This is all happening so fast." "I am sure, Dad," Natalie said, surprised to realize it was true. "Jackson is a good man. He better be, or he will have to answer to me," Robert said, though his voice was gentle. The ceremony took place in the garden at sunset, with the vineyards stretching out behind them, and the sky painted in shades of orange and pink. As Natalie walked down the aisle, she saw Jackson waiting for her, and her breath caught. He looked devastatingly handsome in his tailored suit, but it was the expression on his face that stopped her. He was looking at her like she was the only person in the world, like this moment actually mattered to him. When she reached him, he whispered, "You look incredible." "So do you," she whispered back. The officiant, a friend of the Whitmore family, spoke about marriage as a partnership, about building something together that is stronger than what either person could create alone. Natalie found herself actually listening, actually imagining what that might feel like. When it came time for vows, Jackson had prepared something personal. "Natalie, I promise to respect your dreams, support your vision, and never take for granted the chance you are taking on me in this unconventional arrangement. I promise to be honest, to work alongside you as an equal partner, and to make sure that whatever we build together is something we can both be proud of." Natalie's voice shook slightly as she responded. "Jackson, I promise to give this partnership my full effort, to challenge you when needed, to support you when required, and to approach whatever we create together with integrity and hope." When the officiant pronounced them married and Jackson kissed her, it was soft and brief, but Natalie felt something shift inside her. This was supposed to be fake, but it felt remarkably real. The honeymoon house. The house in Napa Valley where they would spend their week-long honeymoon was a smaller property the Whitmore family kept for private retreats. Made of stone and reclaimed wood, it blended perfectly with the surrounding vineyards and oak trees. "This is beautiful," Natalie breathed as they entered. Large windows framed views of rolling hills, and the interior was decorated with comfortable furniture and local art. "My grandmother designed this place," Jackson said, carrying their bags inside. "She believed houses should feel like homes, not showpieces. She would have liked you." They stood in the living room, suddenly awkward now that they were alone and actually married. "So," Natalie said, "what do married people do on their honeymoon?" Jackson laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "I suppose real married people do not stand around wondering what they are supposed to do. Want to open some wine and figure this out." They sat on a back patio as the sun set over the vineyards, drinking wine from the Whitmore family vineyard and talking. Really talking. Jackson told her about his childhood, about the pressure of being the heir, about his love for building things that lasted. Natalie shared her own story, growing up in a working-class family where every dollar mattered, about her parents who had sacrificed everything for her education, about her determination to prove that good design could change lives. "You know, I realized," Jackson said as the stars began appearing overhead. "I have had hundreds of business meetings, dated dozens of women, but I have never had a conversation like this, where I feel like someone actually understands what drives me." "I know what you mean," Natalie admitted. "Most people think I am crazy for caring so much about affordable housing design. They do not understand why it matters. It matters because everyone deserves dignity," Jackson said. "Because the space you live in shapes how you see yourself and your possibilities. Because architecture is not just about buildings, it is about lives. Natalie looked at him in the moonlight, seeing past the wealth and privilege to the person underneath. You really believe that? I really do. Why do you think I've been driving my family crazy with sustainable building initiatives? They want maximum profit. I want maximum impact. Working together. The next morning, they spread out their plans for the housing project on the dining table. Natalie had brought her portfolio, and Jackson had his development plans. What started as a quick review turned into hours of collaborative design. What if we created central courtyards in each building cluster? Natalie suggested, sketching quickly. Places where neighbors actually meet, where kids can play safely, where community happens naturally. Jackson leaned over her shoulder, studying the sketch. Yes, and we could integrate community gardens. Give people the ability to grow their own food. Teach kids about where food comes from. Solar panels on every roof, Natalie added. Lower utility costs for families, better for the environment. Shared workshop spaces in the community center. Places where people can learn skills, start small businesses. They worked through lunch, their ideas building on each other, creating something neither could have designed alone. By evening, they had outlined a project that was revolutionary in its scope and humanity. This is incredible, Jackson said, looking at the plans covering the table. Natalie, this is going to change lives. Real families. We did this together, she said. Your understanding of construction and financing, my design vision. We make a good team. We really do, Jackson said softly, and something in his tone made Natalie look up. Their eyes met, and the air between them shifted. This was not just professional anymore. This was not just a business arrangement. The shift. That night, they cooked dinner together, moving around the kitchen with surprising ease. Jackson chopped vegetables while Natalie prepared pasta, and they talked about everything and nothing. Music played from Jackson's phone, old soul songs that made Natalie smile. Dance with me, Jackson said suddenly, extending his hand. What? We danced at the wedding, but that was for show. This is just us. Dance with me for real. Natalie took his hand, and he pulled her close. They swayed to the music, and Natalie let herself relax against him. He smelled like wine and wood smoke and something uniquely him. This is dangerous, she whispered. What is this? Us. It is starting to feel real. Jackson pulled back slightly to look at her. Would that be so terrible? If it became real, it would be terrifying. We barely know each other. This was supposed to be simple. Nothing about you is simple, Natalie Brooks. That is what I like about you. Jackson, she started, but he gently touched her cheek. I'm not asking you to fall in love with me. I am just asking you to stay open to the possibility that this could become something neither of us expected. Honesty and fear. Later that night, they sat by the fireplace, the comfortable silence between them feeling natural now. Can I ask you something personal? Natalie said. Anything. Why did you really make that promise to your parents? The one about marrying the first woman through your door. Jackson was quiet for a long moment. Because I was tired of being treated like a chess piece instead of a person. My whole life has been about the family business, the family name, the family expectations. I have worked myself to exhaustion trying to prove I am worthy of it all. And it is never enough. That sounds lonely. It is. And then you walked through that door, angry about a scheduling mix-up, determined to fight for an opportunity, and I saw someone who understood what it meant to work for everything you have. Someone who was not impressed by my last name or my bank account. I saw a person I might actually want to know. Natalie felt tears prickling her eyes. I am scared, Jackson. What if this falls apart? What if we hurt each other? What if we do not? What if we give this a real chance and discover something amazing? The first real kiss. On their last night in Napa, they took a late evening walk through the vineyards. The moon was full, casting silver light over the rows of vines heavy with grapes. I didn't want to go back to the city, Natalie admitted. Here, it is just us. No expectations, no performance. It feels simple. It does not have to change, Jackson said. We can make our life together as simple or as complicated as we choose. They stopped walking, standing between the rows of vines, surrounded by the quiet of the countryside. Natalie, Jackson said, "I need you to know something. This stopped being an arrangement for me somewhere between the contract signing and now. I am falling for you. Actually falling, not pretending." Natalie's heart hammered in her chest. "Jackson, you do not have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens next, I want it to be real." Natalie looked at this man who had entered her life so unexpectedly, who had offered her not just a job, but a partnership, who had seen her value when she was at her lowest. She thought about the past week, about the laughter and conversation, about how natural it felt to be with him. "Kiss me," she whispered. "For real this time. Not for show, not for the cameras. Just because you want to." Jackson cupped her face in his hands and kissed her slowly, deeply, pouring all the feelings he had been holding back into that moment. Natalie kissed him back, letting herself feel everything she had been afraid to acknowledge. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "That felt pretty real," Jackson said with a small smile. "It did," Natalie agreed. "So what do we do now?" "Building something real." Back in Sausalito, they settled into an unexpected rhythm. Mornings were spent working on a housing project. Natalie in her design studio that Jackson had set up for her, Jackson in his home office managing Whitmore Enterprises. They came together for lunch, sharing ideas and progress. Afternoons often found them at construction sites, Natalie explaining her vision to contractors while Jackson ensured budgets and timelines stayed on track. Evenings were for cooking together, for long conversations on the deck overlooking the bay, for discovering each other's quirks and habits. 3 months into the marriage, the housing project broke ground. The ceremony was small but meaningful, with community members from the neighborhood where the project would be built, local officials, and the Whitmore family. "Today, we begin building more than houses," Jackson said in his speech. "We begin building community, opportunity, and dignity. This project exists because my wife showed me what is possible when we combine vision with purpose." Natalie squeezed his hand, proud of what they had created together. Rebecca approached them afterward, tears in her eyes. "I was wrong to push you toward marriage for business reasons, but I was right that you needed a partner. Natalie, thank you for being what he needed." "He is what I needed too," Natalie said, realizing how true it was. The truth revealed. 6 months into their marriage, during a quiet dinner at home, Jackson set down his fork with a serious expression. "Natalie, we need to talk." Her stomach clenched. This was it, the moment everything fell apart. "Okay," she said carefully. "Our anniversary is in 6 months. The end of our 1-year agreement." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I do not want to divorce you. I want this to be real, permanent. I want to build a life with you, not just a project. But I need to know if you feel the same way." Relief and joy flooded through Natalie. "I've been terrified to tell you that I love you, that this stopped being an arrangement for me months ago." Jackson stood and pulled her up into his arms. "You love me. I love you. I love your passion for your work, your dedication to making things better, the way you listen when I talk. I love that you see me as an equal partner. I love you, Jackson Whitmore." He kissed her deeply, lifting her off her feet. "I love you too. So much. Marry me again, but for real this time." A small ceremony, just us and the people who matter, saying vows we actually mean. "Yes." Natalie laughed through happy tears. "Yes to all of it. The real beginning." 1 year after their first wedding, they stood in the community center of the housing project they had built together. Around them were families moving into new homes, children playing in the courtyards Natalie had designed, neighbors meeting in the gardens Jackson had insisted on. Their families gathered in the center's main room, transformed for the occasion with flowers from the community gardens and decorations made by residents. "We are gathered here today," the officiant began, "to witness Jackson and Natalie renew their commitment to each other. Though they have been married for a year, today they choose again, with full knowledge of who they are together." Jackson's vows were simple and profound. "Natalie, a year ago, I asked you to take a chance on an unconventional arrangement. You said yes, and in doing so, you gave me something I did not know I was missing. A true partner, an equal, someone who challenges me and supports me in the same breath. I'm not asking you to marry me anymore. I am thanking you for choosing to stay." Natalie's tears flowed freely. Jackson, you offered me a job and accidentally gave me a life. You showed me that taking risks can lead to the greatest rewards. You taught me that real partnership means building something together that neither could create alone. I choose you today and always. As they kissed, surrounded by the community they had created and the families who believed in them, Natalie realized that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. What had started as a reckless promise made in anger had become a love story neither could have predicted. And the project they had built together stood as proof that when two people with vision and heart join forces, they can change not just their own lives, but the lives of hundreds of others. Their real marriage was just beginning, built on a foundation of respect, partnership, and genuine love. And watching the families around them celebrate in homes that offered dignity and hope, both Jackson and Natalie knew they had found something rare and precious. They had found each other, and together they would keep building something beautiful,